Hello, everybody! Welcome to today's episode of Beagle Clan. I am your host, Beagle Boy, and we're here with a few couple guests. Go ahead and introduce yourselves going clockwise.
Okay, I'm called Philo Person. Uh, what more? What more did you could ask?
Alright. Okay, awkward silence. You guys gonna
Oh,
introduce yourselves? Or...
I'm sorry. All right. I'm Mr. Dirt Mason. But thank you guys for coming up to the stream. Sorry, just it's been a rough day.
Yeah, it's been a rough day for a lot of us.
True. Flash.
Alright.
Flash.
And last but not least, you got Blue. If he wants to introduce himself, go right ahead.
I have nothing to say actually, so you know.
All right, just didn't want to accidentally cut you off or anything. Sorry, we're kind of doing this a little. Sorry, guys, we're kind of doing this stream like a little bit late. Like we've all kind of had a rough day, so it seems a little disorganized from last time. But today's episode is going to be about future Nintendo ideas in terms of their platforms and what we want to see going from the company going forward. No, none of us work for Nintendo. We're not sharing anything. We're not affiliated with them in any way. Please don't copyright this again. So we're just gonna give our ideas for what we hope to see for their next platform. As some of us some of us have heard the leak for the NX2, and we're gonna kind of give like our ideas on how we want the platform to succeed. Anybody want to take the mantle to start this off?
The NX2, right, which is probably the Switch 2, as I know. I hope one of the things I hope is that it's powerful as they say it will be. They said there's rumors and stuff like that it should be just as powerful as the PlayStation 4 or powerful as the PS5. I hope that's true because I really want to see more. I want to see more AAA games on the Nintendo platform, and not just the Mario and Legend of Zelda, but I mean like new IPs, AAA IPs or AA IPs. Because there's a lot of indie games on the Switch, which are good, but there's also not a lot of like decent like AAA games on there too. Besides the family-friendly games.
Well, to add to that, I would actually like to add this on Mason's point. Well, yes, there might be a future for the Nintendo console ideas for NX2, the next Switch game. I think that there's a bit of I don't know, misconception, I should say, because there was leaked rumors about that, which I would not get it into. But the short story for that is, it's a bit of a, I wouldn't call it misnomer, just more so that the idea for the next Switch is just not there, at least not in the form that we think it is. But I do have to agree with Mason's point, because they should have a lot of AAA games that isn't just family-friendly games that we see. There should also be other games that we'd like to see in any form of that. And although I'm not a Nintendo fanboy like any others are, I at least would like to see that happening.
I enjoy Nintendo, but the problem I have with Nintendo is that they don't strive for more. They just strive for what they have. And I wish they would do a lot more. Because while the Switch is a good console, when you compare it to the the Steam Deck, it just beats it in every single category.
It does.
The Steam Deck is everything the Switch should be. And I feel like the Switch 2 should step up the competition with the Steam Deck. Because right now, you can get a Steam Deck and play all your PC games on the Steam Deck. Basically, most AAA titles on Steam, including major ones like Call of Duty, GTA, You can play RPGs like Skyrim. Of course, you can play Skyrim on Switch, but you can't play Skyrim with mods on Switch. You can play big games and stuff like that. Now, of course, the one thing that has it going for the Switch is the indie games, but they're as good as that sounds. There's too many indie games and too abundant of indie games, and by that, I mean there are games on the Switch that just literally I don't know why the fuck they're even on here. Like, for example, the tons of anime puzzle games that are literally just copycats of each other, dating simulators, shit. It's kind of like really boring because it's like that's what I see. And then of course there's the small developers, of course, that make some good, decent indie games. But most of the time, when I look at the library of games on the Switch, it's like if they have a port, right, of a AAA game on the Switch, you know it's not going to be the best version because they're going to have to scale it down. Sometimes they get away with it, and sometimes they're able to make it good, a good port, and then other times, like let's bring up Mortal Kombat 11 for Switch. A horrible example of how not to port a Switch game.
And at Mortal Kombat 1, you shouldn't forget about that.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat 1 is also another obvious one. But let's say this. So they put the Saints Row collection, so basically Saints Row 3 and 4 on there. But it would be so nice to see there being ports of like Saints Row 1, Saints Row 2, or older games like Midnight Club, or of course they got Red Dead Redemption on the Switch. Now, I think Red Dead Redemption on the Switch is actually fine. I think it's actually worth the price because taking Red Dead on the go is a pretty good thing. But playing Red Dead on PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 and Xbox, of course, that makes no sense because with the Xbox, you can literally just grab your Red Dead Redemption disc and install it and play it at 60 frames per second at 4K. And on the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 4 or 5, why would you even play Red Dead Redemption at that point? But for the Switch, it makes sense.
It does. But you do have to take into consideration that the Switch is underpowered. So you got to have to remember that.
That's one of the issues is that while it is impressive that it can run some of this hardware, it's no excuse to not put in some games that would really help the Switch out. I'm not talking like the newest release of Call of Duty. I mean, it would be cool if it had Black Ops on it. If it had Call of Duty Black Ops that had the full campaign, the full multiplayer, the zombies, that would be cool. I mean, I have no doubt that the Switch can run it. Game from 2010, because this is our outdated hardware, and it should be able to run those games. It's just up to the developer that can port it correctly. Because there are some games on the Switch that can be ported.
The issue is.
Go ahead.
Yes. But there's also, this is actually another example of what actually went down badly. Look at one other example that you have to think about it. Batman Arkham Knight on Switch.
Oh, yeah.
A very recent one. And it runs so badly that it ran at 20 or 15 frames per second. That is an unacceptable port of a game.
See, and that's the problem. Is that when I hear they're bringing so-and-so game from the PlayStation 3 to Xbox 360 era, I immediately assume that, it's not going to run great because it's the Switch. That shouldn't be the case. That really shouldn't be.
Well, to illustrate that point, it's because since the Switch, by design, is supposed to be like a handheld type of console, of course, it's not going to be exactly like up to date as like the PlayStation or Xbox because those are made like, hardware at the home, whereas the Switch is supposed to be like, on the go. So of course it's not going to be like a 101% like direct translation. Like, sure, that doesn't excuse like poor quality, of course, for like a PS3 and 360 type of game that was made like fucking 2010, of course. But it's like that's kind of why you never saw like direct ports like from main consoles to like the DS lineup, why they almost in some ways were like just completely different games entirely because of that factor alone. But it seems like once the Switch came out, they just threw that logic out of the window or whatnot, which I always thought was freaking stupid because sometimes each game like they would have the same title, of course, but they would not be the same direct game. Like not even like fourth gen, like even from like the fourth generation, like SNES Genesis era, all the way up to like seventh gen, like 360 Wii PS3 type of era, of course. But it seems like once the eighth gen came around, they kind of threw that logic out of the window, which is why for their new platform, I would kind of hope that they do return to that same idea where we know it's not going to port over very well, so we'd rather just have someone else, take the same name but like make it a complete different game or whatnot. Because when you think about it, that would just boost more sales and make more money.
Yeah. Thankfully, that doesn't really happen that much on the Switch. Thankfully, sometimes we get the full product and sometimes we don't.
True.
So it's a bit of a gamble.
Yes, it is a bit of a gamble. In fact, that is actually true when you think about that.
I mean, the Switch is a perfect place for indie games. I'll say that. I mean, there is a lot of indie games on there, and if you love indie games, it's perfect for that. There's a whole abundance of it. Sure, there's some, like I said, that sometimes you'll be scrolling through the indie games and you'll be like, why the fuck is this even on the Switch? But it's Nintendo's market, pretty much.
True.
Now, not all the indie games are great. I'll say that, but there's some decent ones.
Right. But I will say, like, one idea that I hope the NX2, like we're just calling it by the code name, does. I mean,
same code name for the Switch too. So NX1 or what was called the NX, right?
Yeah.
So NX2 would perfectly describe the Switch too. We continue.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but like, part of me doesn't want it to be called the NX2 because a common complaint, or not complaint, but like a common reason why the Wii U didn't sell as well was like because it was literally took the same name as its predecessor, to where when you had all the peripherals that took the name, like the Wii Fit, the Wii Golf, like just to name like a few. So then it's like when you come up with like Wii U, it's like nobody really knew that it was like a full-fledged console.
They just thought it was another peripheral for the Wii.
Yeah, not only that, but it's like going back to like the NES, like they always tried to come up with like their own like creative name, which is one thing I'll give Nintendo for doing compared to like say Sony and Microsoft, is that they didn't like just call it like the Nintendo like 1, 2, 3, 4 or like some random ass number that they could come up with. You had the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was simple enough, and then jump to 16-bit. They call it the Super Nintendo because you're playing with power, superpower.
Yeah, then, Nintendo always had those catchy phrases with their Nintendo consoles. Nintendo does what was it? Nintendo does what Sega.
No, that was Sega's catchphrase for the Genesis. It was basically Genesis does what Nintendo does.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was Sega who did that. But anyways, going back to my point is like, they always had like their own like gimmick to call their console, so it's like you never really saw it as like the direct continuation, like how you were with like the PlayStation lineup 1 through 4, or the Xbox lineup, where they just come up with like whatever dumbass number you could think of, like
The series,
the original 360 one, Series X.
I absolutely hate the names of the new Xboxes. The Series X and the Series S. Like, that's more fucking confusing than the Xbox One.
Remember when Xbox One was originally supposed, when everybody thought it was going to be called 720?
Oh, dude, I remember watching those videos when I was a kid, and it had that fucking like that classic fucking techno music, and like, oh my god, guys, I got the behind the scenes footage of the new Xbox 720. It's just some fucking stock image of this fucking washing machine looking ass thing. Ball. Remember when people thought it was gonna be a fucking ball, dude? That shit. I used to believe that shit when I was a kid.
Oh fuck! Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The Xbox 720, guys, is a spear. It's someone, and then I remember watching this one video where this guy compared it to the spherical ball from Drake and Josh.
Well, I think in some way, like the memes that they call the PS5 and Series X or S, like I wonder if they actually caught on to that video and decided to like fucking run with it. Because like all the memes that say like PS5 is a Wi-Fi router, Series X is like a fucking refrigerator. Like I wonder if those two companies actually caught on to that video at some point and thought they'd fucking run with it.
Dude, I know Xbox has, because they actually made an actual refrigerator out of an actual Xbox refrigerator.
I saw that once at a store,
yeah,
and I was like,
yeah, you could actually buy a real fucking mini fridge as your Xbox Series X, and it has its own sounds.
I'm
like,
that'd be a good April Fool's
meta.
prank.
And then another thing they did, which we'll go back to topic real quick. I just want to mention this. They brought back the Duke controller as a wireless controller to have with the nostalgic Xbox intro when you turn on the controller.
Right. But anyway,
but one thing I will say, so regarding to Nintendo, I do agree with you. It should not be called the Switch 2, because then that would just be fucking confusing, right? I think they should come up with a different name, but I hope they keep the aspect of handheld and home console, because I think that is perfect. They should run with that. That is a perfect combination, because the thing that makes the Switch so unique is that you can not only take your games on the go, but you can take them literally anywhere.
Well, yeah, but I think that gets to my big point that I brought up with before I went off the rails with the whole, like, PlayStation and Xbox, like, lineup, making fun of them. But I think what they should do is, because, we've seen them try to do the, like, handheld console hybrid, like, arguably with the Wii U first. But it's like, the Wii U relies too much on the console aspect, whereas the Switch kind of relied on the handheld department.
Yeah, I could see the Wii U as the prototype successor to the Switch.
Okay,
basically.
I'm back. What are we talking about?
Oh, we're
Nintendo.
Yeah, we're bringing up like what we want to see for their new console going forward.
Anyway, continue with what you're saying.
So what I was saying is, like, they should probably try to take the best elements from the Wii U and the Switch and, like, try to make it where, both can be connected, but that they also could work, like, separately. Like, take a note from, like, Sony, what they did with their Vita connecting to the PS4 when that launched. Like how...
Just like how you can do with the 3DS. With the 3DS and the Wii U, yes. They should do that.
Yeah, because not only that, but like when the Switch wasn't even announced yet, I remember there was like one, like, not like a prototype, but like one leak kind of thing that I actually did think was a pretty cool idea. It was called the Nintendo Fusion, where it was like, it worked as like both like a separate handheld and a separate like console, like, all together. Like, I think they should use that as the basis for their next, system, but also take a page out of Sony's, like out of Sony's playbook by like trying to make the handheld and console like, you know, still do the hybrid, but also have them like function separate where you don't need one or the other to operate like how you had to with the Wii U and the Switch.
Yeah.
All right.
That would be a great idea, actually. Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to give Blue the floor since he just got on here. What would you like to say on this subject? Any ideas you thought of?
What, for Nintendo?
Yeah, for the topic in general.
You know, I would like to see I would like to see another console that's like the next Nintendo 64 because that's like my favorite console of all time. Not to go full on nostalgia blinded. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, the Switch is the best console that's doing really good so far. But you know, I don't know. There's something about the N64 that makes it so special, especially the games made by Rare.
Yeah, the Nintendo 64 was the big thing back then. And even though 3D games weren't technically, they were new, but they weren't. It wasn't. I don't think it was the N64 that really made a new concept. I think it was the N64 that made it popular, though, right? Because at the time there was 3D consoles coming out at the time, and Sony was making one, Nintendo was making one, Sega I think was probably working on something.
Yes.
But the Nintendo 64 is what popularized the 3D game genre.
I would argue that was more so the PS1, or specifically that they just got really lucky with all the third-party.
I would say that too.
But yeah,
Both
like
the 64 and the PS1 are giants in terms of 3D gaming.
Well, yeah, but more specifically, something that I kind of noticed with, you know, with Blue's point when he brought up the N64, like how it, like because of how it was so special because it tried to like push like how a 3D game works. It's like, yeah, it refined how a 3D game like, you know, should work. But I think that but there was also another aspect to that that I kind of want to bring up, something that Nintendo doesn't really seem to be doing anymore for whatever goddamn reason. Whenever they make their consoles or platforms in general, they always seem to make it less about the gamers and more about like their casuals. Like they've done this ever since the freaking Wii came out. Like how that method was like, oh no, we really don't want you. We want your grandparents. We want your aunt, your brother, your sister. Those people who don't really care about games or don't know what games are all about. We want them. But like, and so they made their entire advertisement based around that. And you know, after the honeymoon phase, nobody really gave a crap about the Wii's anymore, and it just kind of was there to collect dust, which in some ways I would argue kind of did more damage to Nintendo than it ever really did. But at the time, though, in the mid 2000s, I kind of see why they tried to do so because they wanted to like breathe new life in because they didn't want to go the same way Sega did, like after the Dreamcast failed and everything. But you know, but it's just in some ways I just kind of think like, you know, since we brought up how like indie games are having like, you know, their own like little paradise with the Switch, it's like now's your chance to like, you know, get back to making the platforms about the gamers as a whole, because even if they are 20% of the market, they're the ones who are going to be lining up camping out at a Best Buy, Target, Walmart, GameStop, wherever, you know, wherever video games are sold, and you know, buy their platforms and still continue to do so.
Yeah, I agree because it should be about the gamers up front. With how the modern gaming industry is going, I think Nintendo needs to capitalize on focusing on the gamers more than the money in hand.
Well, because when you think about it, Nintendo's kind of like the last one that's really game centric in a way.
Yeah,
'Cause-
like that. That's like I can look at Nintendo and still see some of their IPs. Like, hey, these games are still going strong to this day, and Nintendo's still kind of doing it the way, kind of almost the old school way, you know. Yeah, of
Well,
course they
exactly
got
that.
the things here and there. They've done a couple things here and there that I, don't agree with, like their Nintendo Online service. But
Yeah.
they they've been doing it pretty well for a while, and they just need to keep stepping it up.
Yeah. I think, I think the 2010s, well, the early 2010s was a really bad start for Nintendo itself. Mainly, it's because they just fucked themselves over with the Wii U.
They got a little over their heads with the Wii U, is what they kind of did. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Wii U does have a good library. It just if you go back to the Wii U, yes, it does have a good library of games now. And that was one of the issues with the Wii U. It didn't have many games at launch. At launch, there wasn't that many games. Now, looking at the Wii U now, there's plenty of fucking games on the Wii U. Hell, you can play Black Ops 2 on the Wii U. That was fucking impressive. But the Wii U now, it's like what they need to do is keep what they're doing with the Switch. Like, take what they learned from the Switch and just improved it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think because I would love to see Nintendo's next console do well. I don't want the Switch to be the only thing that's brought them up from grace and then to pull another Wii U situation. Because Nintendo's always been about innovation.
For the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, the Wii, yeah, they got lucky with the Wii. The Wii got lucky. The reason why I got lucky is because we were in a motion control movement at that point. That was the biggest thing back then. Everyone's after the I think like because like after the Wii did it, then Sony started doing it, Xbox started doing it, but they could not achieve the success that Nintendo has.
Probably because Sony and Microsoft always did it in like the fucking dumbass ways imaginable.
The greedy ways is what they did.
Not what my main point is.
Now you gotta understand something. This is something that is pertinent for that. I have to add to this context. That Nintendo were just got lucky that they got away with the Nintendo Wii using motion controls for that. But there's also a point that they made a dumbass decisions. And it was not because of how they did it with the Nintendo. What was the last Nintendo console that they made before Nintendo Wii itself?
GameCube. You want to talk about? Are we talking about in handhelds too? Because they also had a hand in the DS, and then they came out with the 3DS.
Yeah, I may get a lot of hate for saying this, but for me personally, I'm more of a Game Boy guy than a DS guy.
I actually kind of agree on that point.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some games on the DS I enjoy, but I think because I have a Game Boy Advance, and I think there's a lot of good library of games on the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
DS, maybe, but some of them just haven't aged well.
But I will admit, I did have a lot of fond memories with the 3DS.
Yes, especially mine with like playing Super Smash Brothers, playing Mario Kart.
Mario Kart, Mario Party.
And there's a lot of good games on the 3DS, like Monster Hunter being one of them, of course.
Yeah.
The Fire Emblem games. Let's see, of course, the Xenoblade Chronicle games. Those are really good. The Zelda games. Of course, the Mario games. I think like the 3DS had a really good selection on its library.
Yeah, but it would be great to see the Game Boy consoles make a comeback because, again, Game Boy Advanced and I'm not sure if I'm speaking properly. Please forgive me. The Game Boy Advance and my favorite Game Boy console of all time, Game Boy Color, were the best.
Yeah. I mean, I also currently have a Game Boy SP. This is one of my favorite versions of the Game Boy.
Fuck yeah.
It's a blue one, and honestly, I mean, going back to play some of the Game Boy Advance games, there's some good ones in there. Of course, there are some that aren't that great, but those are counting on the ports. More of the not the more modern like ports, but I'm talking more about the they had actually a pretty good library of NES and Super NES games put on the Advance that you could play. Of course, one of them that was pretty cool is that you got Legend of Zelda 4 Swords, a multiplayer advanced game. That one was pretty fun, I've heard. And then I heard they have Legend of Zelda Spirit Train or something like that for advanced. That's a good one. Because for the advanced games I currently have, of course, I have Pokemon Fire Red. And that's what I've been recently playing.
Interesting.
Going back to the classic Pokemon games is actually pretty cool. Because seeing how the modern Pokemon games aren't doing that great, especially with the controversy with Scarlet and Violet's launch.
Does anybody remember Pokemon Snap?
I heard of that. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen those for Switch.
That's a great
something
game.
like that. Yeah, and then they made them for like the Switch. I think they remastered them.
What they should wind up doing, like, you know, for the next Pokemon, like, or like not like, you know, the next one, but like, you know, for the next platform, like, you know, Pokemon on a console for like a while since 64, they really should do a sequel to Pokemon Snap. Like, I don't understand why they haven't done that yet. Like, Wii U, Switch, like, you know, the handheld itself could have been like a fully functional, like, you know, camera, and you could, like, you know, take a really good twist on the formula for it. Like, that would have been like easy money, like, since Pokemon Go. Why the hell have they not done that yet?
Okay, well, for one thing, the Wii U sucked, and number two, Pokemon Go sucks.
Well, I meant regardless, but like, you know, you have like, but like, you have like the opportunity, like, right in your hand for like easy money, and some reason you just don't use it. But anyways, like, to basically kind of not relapse, but like to go back on the point where Mr. Dirt Mason was saying, like, you know, that Nintendo was getting a little over on their head with going from Wii to Wii U. Something I just realized, it almost kind of reminds me a bit of how they had a similar story with Sony when it came to going from PS2 to PS3, because their platform.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, both of them had their platforms like so well. They pretty much, like, Sony in particular, like PS2, because it sold so well, and we're probably not going to see something like that ever again, even with Switch's success. Like, don't quote me on that one. I haven't looked at the actual numbers yet. But basically, Sony was basically like, holy shit, where are the best? So we're going to add all this crap on the PS3 to make it like the ultimate machine, like full compatibility with PS2, PS1. Introduce a whole new format named Blu-ray, because DVD like skyrocketed the PS2 sales in terms of marketing. You got your memory sticks, you got your CF port, SD cards, like multiple USB ports, like 4 of them I think it was for the fat model, because I actually own that thing. And just when it launched, nobody gave a shit about it, because while it costed like $600, they actually lost $900. Well, like, not lost, but like it cost them $900 to make that thing. So it was a $300 loss per unit. And, you know, for like a good couple years, up until like 2009, I think it was, Sony started to get a little ahead of themselves by basically being like, you don't understand. We gave you this ultimate console, gave you everything you could ever want for it. How dare you not buy it when it does everything? So it got them to a point in the road where they had to make a decision. Keep going the route they did, or accept the fact that you're not winning the generation, but cut back on what some of your on some of the features, like at least get units into the homes, and come back bigger and better with your next system. They went with the latter. They cut back on some of their features, especially with the PS3 Slim, where a lot of the fat model features just didn't exist because they knew, going into PS4, making the same mistake, being like, we screwed up, we have to fix this, fix our image, and then we'll win the next generation. And look at that. They're doing way better now than they were then. You could have seen, but how this relates to Nintendo is because they kind of started out the same way as Sony did, but then 2 years later, when Satoru Iwata, before he passed away, announced NX, pretty much everybody was like, okay, so you're just giving up on Wii U then, when it just hit 2 years that it had released. So pretty much the Wii U was kind of just a doormat, so it's expectations for Switch was probably low at the time, or at least was a mixed bag at best. But then it launched, and everything just kind of just played itself out. So I would say Nintendo just got pretty freaking lucky. So let's just hope they don't do the same mistake that Sony did going into Switch 2, like what we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah, because I really hope that Nintendo doesn't just fucking go, oh, well, let's just get cocky a little bit. No, you gotta do this one right. Because you got good with the Switch, but this can all fucking topple down if it's not done right.
True. And you also have to mention this because I'm actually as a consumer advocate. There's also some things that you have to take into consideration when it comes to that. Even with the future Nintendo console ideas that we're talking about here, there's a bit of an anti-consumer practices that they've been doing, especially what they did with the Nintendo Switch and with the older previous Nintendo console games they made, and the handheld console for that, no less.
Yeah.
And the Nintendo eShop that they had is completely shut down. No way, there's no way that you would be able to.
They were shutting down the eShop for the 3DS.
Yes, there was no way that you would be able to buy that, and the only way that you would have illegally obtained the game is through legal means. And after that shut down, you wouldn't be able to buy it anymore, even through digital store. Now, when it comes to that, they're all always anti-consumers, and I'm a consumer advocate for this particular matter. So when you think about this, even with the Nintendo ideas that we're talking about here, you have to take into consideration how bad business practices that they've been doing in terms of a consumer practice that they've been doing. And if it's something that is anti-consumer, first off, you gotta take a look at the history of what Nintendo did is something that was extremely wrong. There was at least one report that happened in Norway, and in Norway, the Norwegian customer actually filed a complaint about it. They really filed a complaint towards Nintendo, but Nintendo did nothing about that. So another case that it actually happens something like this is that even if you accidentally bought something that you should, even if you accidentally bought something that you did not meant to buy, you can't refund it. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can't refund the game that you've already bought. And that's an anti-consumer practice.
Yeah, that's one of the things about the eShop. You cannot refund whatsoever if you buy something.
Basically, to make the point stand sorry to cut you off, but to make the point stand, if paying isn't owning, piracy shouldn't be stealing.
Yeah, 100%.
True.
Right.
If I buy a game and 10 years down the road, this network shuts down and now I can't play the fucking game, right? What's stopping me from pirating the game? I paid for the fucking game. I should own it. This is why with new games now these days, this is the problem with physical media. You're never buying a physical disc. You're just buying a license agreement that will go out and probably God knows when. And you better fucking hope not, because if it does, you're fucked. Because it's hard now these days to find a game that's fully single player, doesn't require DRM, online connection, shit like that. You know, I miss the good old days when you could buy a game for $60, come home, put in the console, play the fucking game, and like 20 years later, you can still play the fucking game. Now it's no longer like that. It sucks. I hope
And things like DLC, like with like DLC pre-order.
if the servers go down and the
don't
DLC,
make that
you
anymore.
can't buy it, right? Guess what? You can't buy the DLC either. So you just missed out on content.
And that's actually true, because somebody actually said that in one of the videos. I actually came across the video at one point. He actually said this: video games are supposed to be art, not a business. And it's a deal. And there's a perfect example of this. Okay, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 originally was supposed to be a complete finished product as it was, but when they start pushing the DLCs in there, it actually felt incomplete. And to me, that's just what it feels like, an insult to the customers. They said that they weren't gonna be doing the DLCs in there, but to be honest, once they start pushing the DLCs in there, that I have a serious issue with that. I really do.
Miss the days of DLC, to be honest. I really don't like this live service fucking shit that every game has now these days. I really miss. I like especially with Call of Duty. I just wish I could just pay $15 for a fucking map pack. I really wish, because like the live service shit is just stupid. Because all it is grinding. You know, grinding a battle pass.
Yes. Not to mention, there's also another part of it that really has to be mentioned about that, is that with the recent business practices, what the Nintendo is doing, even when they do decide to make a Nintendo console, so for that, once they start doing that, look at what the fuck they did with the Nintendo Switch. They really force you to buy Nintendo emulated consoles that you already played in the past, and it's inferior than the original consoles like 64. Nintendo GameCube.
Yeah, I heard about that. I heard how the Nintendo N64 variants on the emulator are just fucking god awful. Yeah, it's like, why? I mean, not everyone has the privileges I have when I live in Arkansas, where I can go to a retro game store and, hey, do you guys got any N64s in stock? And they're like, oh, we got one in stock, right? Not everyone has that luxury. You know, some people have to rely on Amazon or eBay. You know, eBay's the last thing you ever do. But it's like, if they're going to emulate these games and put them on there, at least actually attempt to fucking make them work. Or at least try to put them in there where they at least, like, work. Because I heard how bullshit the N64 package for the Nintendo Online is. It's like, it's not even that great. It's like, you can just spend your money by buying an N64 and playing the games that you could play on there. I mean, fuck. I mean, dude, there's literally kits you can buy for these older consoles now where you can convert them to HDMI. I did the same thing for my PS2. I have a component to HDMI conversion kit. Doesn't really increase the picture, but it modernizes it where I can hook it up to my modern HD TV, like 4K TV and stuff. But it's like, with the services, like, for example, Sony offers with its PlayStation Plus service, right? Something similar to Nintendo. When they were saying that they were putting like PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 games, I was kind of excited until I found out it was all behind a paywall. And the fact that you're not going to get every PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 game that you want. And that's what's stupid. It's like, I would rather you put in the hardware or an update to let me put the disc that I own into the console and play the original hardware. Now, I can understand with the Switch. Of course, you can't do that with the Switch. The Switch doesn't have the cartridge set for the N64. But the fact that, let's say your only option is to buy the Nintendo Online package for the N64. Well, if that's your only option, it kind of sucks.
It truly does suck. And I'm going to be honest, that is the anti-consumer practices that we had to deal with some of the Nintendo customers that have actually had issues with that. So, to me, even after they shut down the Nintendo eShop there, that's what it felt highly anti-consumer for what Nintendo has pulled.
Exactly, because I'm like, look, I get it. Not a lot of people play the 3DS, but shutting down the fucking store is not a good idea.
And even Mudohara at one point, he actually made a video on that. That once the Nintendo eShop gets shut down, the only way that you would have a game in your possession is that you would legally obtain it through that way. No other way around it.
Yeah, like there are digital games that are digital only on the eShop that you cannot get anywhere else but the eShop. And if the eShop shut down, how the fuck are you gonna play the game?
And it's the same thing that would happen in the older generations of Xbox 360, PS3. As I said, perfect example. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, right? It was originally thought it was a complete game, but once they start pushing the DLC practices, it actually felt incomplete. And if the server gets shut down, or 20 years down the line, if that if the game servers, online services get shut down,
I do believe I would like to purchase one Game Boy.
Sorry about that. Basically, what I was about to do, since we mentioned this whole like anti-consumerism thing, I was gonna share screen a Uncle Al video where he kind of like memed the everlasting shit out of this whole like anti-consumerism thing, which I thought would be like appropriate.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
So,
Something I do want to mention, Firelord. There is another example. You ever heard of the game called Pain on PlayStation 3? It's a PS3 exclusive game, digital only, called Pain. It's literally a ragdoll simulator game. If they shut down the PlayStation Store, you can no longer buy that game, ever. And it was actually referenced in, if you play, because I was playing Astro's Playroom, Sony actually acknowledges the game Pain. I'm actually surprised they actually have. Because that game is one of my favorite games from the PlayStation Store. It's a PlayStation Store exclusive for the PS3. Now, Sony actually went through a similar thing. They were going to shut down the PlayStation 3 store, and they got so much fucking backlash that they actually decided, all right, fine, we will not shut down the store, but you cannot use your credit. You cannot use your credit card on the PS3. You're going to have to use a PlayStation Network card, or you're going to have to put in balance from your PlayStation 4 to use it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So they will not shut down the store, but you have to use PlayStation Network cards or put money in your wallet from your PS4. That's fine, because I was happy with that. I was like, hey, cool. Now I can still buy things on my PS3. I just have to do it a different way, you know? And that's what made me happy about that. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there, Mason.
No,
But
you're
now
good.
here's basically the dump. For those of you who aren't aware of what we're referring to, here's basically how to put it in meme terms.
Excuse me, sir. I do believe I would like to purchase one Game Boy game. It's no longer possible to make Nintendo eShop purchases for Wii U and 3DS. What? But I'm willing to pay you. Yeah. Nope, no purchases allowed. I'm trying to be a good paying customer. Why not put the games on Switch? They aren't available on Switch. Don't you have a Switch eShop? Yep. So you can make your legacy content available there at any time. Yep. I'd like to purchase those games on the eShop with my money, without resorting to piracy, which you so thoroughly despise. So you should make them available for Switch. That makes sense to me. Then do it. We currently have no plans to offer classic content in other ways, and also don't pirate our games.
That is so fucking true. See, that's my point right there. If you're going to look, they should make these storefronts to where you can buy all of the games from previous fucking consoles, you know, or at least remaster these fucking games. That they could at least do.
Yeah, so basically the way I can describe that is they make it harder for you to own their games, but they double down on you for piracy. basically is how that meme video goes. By the way, before
and here's the thing about Nintendo. I don't
that video.
And here's the thing I don't get about Nintendo. Look, they fucking love money, and don't you think it would make an actual make sense as a profit to resell these games on the current store for you to buy on the Switch? I mean, of course, the business has got to make money, but if they really want to print money, if they really want to make consumers happy, put these games on the Switch, and I don't even mean, port them at least. I mean, if they're not remastered, fine, but port these older games to the Switch, and they will make tons of money because that way people can still enjoy older versions of games, but on the newer hardware.
Well, yeah, but it's like not only that, but I think some part of me thinks that the reason that they don't do this is because in some ways they probably profit more off of like piracy, because this is something that I saw on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, where where somebody did like an entire thread that was showing like, you know, how like not to go off topic, but like say how movie companies, how they actually kind of profit more off of you pirating it, so it's not really the type of own in the way that you think. So part of me thinks that Nintendo kind of does the same thing, or unless if I'm proven wrong, but they probably are known to do the same thing where because they double down on the piracy part, probably because they profit more off of it. So it's like they try to come up with this anti-consumerism type of, not anti-consumerism, anti-customer type of mentality that Firelord was just talking about, and especially with how and basically how everybody reacts to it, like, that's so freaking stupid.
Yeah.
Majority of the time, you have to take into consideration that you always have to think about what the caveat is going to have to happen when they do develop the new Nintendo console ideas of what they'll be doing for. So you have to be you have to be cautious about that. So if they do something that is extremely shady, and they do this to their own customers, then that's what's going to be an anti-customer. That's right. And this is why, and incidentally, this is why I have to put this, not to go off topic there, but incidentally, I was just talking to our friend Infinite Retro. He's from a customer's standpoint, he always stands by that. So it's something that feels completely off, and if the game is bad, and if they do something that is completely nonsensical, then you have a valid reason to file a complaint about that. But the problem is with the Nintendo, they don't want to deal with that because they're always on the top, and you get fucked no matter what.
Well, let's be frank here. Nintendo has always kind of, like, ever since NES, they've always kind of had this, in a way,
harsh policies,
customer type of mentality. I mean, it's not sure, it probably is apples to oranges then compared to now, but it's like, even then, they did always kind of come up with like some shady like methods because of like, hey, we're the only shit that's selling here. Like, for a while, you know, even though when games used to be like their own would sometimes be completely different depending on the platform, there was kind of a reason for that. Like, they used to like have these like little contracts with like third-party developers that say, hey, because our shit is the only one that's selling, you have to sign on to this that says, if you make games for our platform, you can't do that on any other, you can't make it for like any other platform. So basically, Master System 7800 didn't get as much third-party support at the time. And, you know, in some ways that almost sounded a bit, you know, not only anti-customer, but also like borderline monopolistic in a way. So it's like, it's only now that it's all not catching up to them, but like only now that some people are starting to like take notice of this. But it's like, this shit has been going on, you know, since the mid 80s. So it's like, what's the difference now?
Yes. What is the damn difference?
Yeah, exactly with Nintendo, because it's like they have these such harsh policies.
Right. So.
And
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I really honestly feel like the way that Nintendo is doing it is an anti-customer or anti-consumer practice that they do. And to be honest, there's just no justifiable reason how Nintendo is conducting their own businesses and what they do with their own customers, yada yada. Because to me, it feels like they're doing it in a way that it just doesn't feel right to anyone, not even to the customers. And I always stand by the customer's point of view, and I stand by consumers, and I stand by the consumer advocate, being the fact that it obviously works the way I really want to be. But the problem is, what they really should have. What they really need to ease up for, and there's going to be certain laws that is going to be mandated in some certain parts of a country that if you do not comply within those laws, and you tell laws that our customer cannot refund the game just because they accidentally bought something they were or supposed to buy, well, fuck you. We're going to bring you to the fucking court. But 9 times out of 10, Nintendo always wins no matter what, and they just get away with that. So even some certain cartridges are fucked no matter what.
Well, not only that, but it's like they also have at times, there have been some exceptions to that. Like, remember the Game Genie, like Galoob, who made that? Like, when they found out, like, oh, people are cheating their way with a game. Like, Nintendo, like, legit sued them for it, and they practically lost in a way. So it's like, maybe back then when they were like, the new kids on the block, they probably weren't able to get away with it, like, as much as they definitely are now. But, like, to say that there weren't any exceptions to it would just be flat out false in that regard.
True. And it doesn't excuse it for what Nintendo is doing right now. Even then, they really have to comply with that law because it's mandated it's going to have to happen. Because if they do not comply, then Nintendo is going to get sued for that.
Exactly, because they definitely should be enforcing refunds. Like, even Steam has refunds that are fair. Like, PlayStation has refunds, Xbox has refunds, but not fucking Nintendo. I mean, what happens when your child gets your fucking credit card and spends all this fucking money, right? What are you supposed to fucking do?
Exactly. Like, they need to make it easier for their next platform. Like, they need to make it easier to be able to refund games, like, for accidental purchases. Like, even if you have to go, like, through a lengthy claim on, like, their website or whatnot, at least that's something compared to not giving you the option.
True. And there's also another thing. There's also another case about several years back when Fallout 76 actually had a big controversy surrounding it. In Australian law, in Australia, even all Australian customers actually had a big, massive complaints about that they couldn't, because there's a law within the Australia that if you actually bought something and you want to refund it, then Sony has to abide by the Australian customers law to abide by that. Otherwise, if you don't comply and customer does not get a refund out of that, then Sony is going to get sued for that, for not allowing customers to refund the game that the customer didn't like at all. So they actually enforced it. And I actually have to applaud the Australian government for doing what's really good, even though they tend to be a bit of a ignorant a-holes that they are. I got to give them props and credit where credit is due, because they know their shit. Because if you fuck up, because if you Sony do not, because they said if you Sony do not comply our laws of what the customer is demanding to do by actually having a refund, then you're gonna get sued and you're gonna get investigated for not complying our laws. They were dead ass serious.
Right.
But for Nintendo, they're not going to comply any goddamn laws whatsoever. They're not going to give them any kind of refunds if they accidentally purchase something, or if they play for more than several hours, they can't get a refund. That's goddamn bullshit.
I know, right?
That's why I don't. That's why I stand by the customer's point of view and the customer's advocate. That if you buy something and if you feel something that is off, especially when it comes to particular games like this, we're talking like Mortal Kombat. Well, I'm not going to discuss about it, but if you feel something that is off, and you played it for less than an hour or 2 hours, and you feel something is off, you could get a refund through Steam or any other places that you could buy, or that you could get a refund, and you get your money back. Not for Nintendo though. Not for Nintendo.
I know, right? It's fucking stupid. It's ass backwards.
Truly, it is ass backwards. And this is what is going to happen. If the future Nintendo console is going to come up at some point in the future, then what's going to happen is they're once again going to be anti-consumer. That's what's going to happen if they don't keep consistent. If they do not follow up the trend that they need to refund the people who accidentally bought it, Nintendo is just not gonna fucking care, and that's the saddest part about that. So you do have to take it into consideration for this particular matter, Mason. And same goes to you, Beagle Boy.
Right. That's pretty much what we need to kind of consider when going into the next, Nintendo platform. And
Yes.
with that being said, I think we concluded a lot of what we wanted to see. We went into a pretty lengthy ideas, very detailed on what we want to see going forward. If the big end does happen to see this, hopefully they're at least smart on how they approach their next system. But other than that, all we can do is just dream. So with that being said, thank you so much for coming on to this stream, you guys. Thank you so much to anybody who is watching this after going live, or those who did come on to see it. If you want to see more like this, feel free to hit the subscribe button, click on the bell to get notified for when more videos come. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Anything you want to say, go ahead and comment down below, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.
See you all next time.
See ya.